And you are now behind enemy lines. Hey there, how you doing, everybody? Gene Baradelli, Ross Galloway here. Ross, how you doing, bro?
What's going on, brother man?
So listen, I got a note from a very important listener over the weekend during Labor Day. Had some family over. My uncle is an avid watcher of the show, and he told me to tell you to stop stroking your damn beard. He says
And
it's too much already. I think it's beard envy, but he just wanted me to tell you that.
I'm probably gonna have to get rid of it soon because it is a bit much, but I'm enjoying it.
Why you gotta get rid of it? What's you're not
It's a
going
little out
back?
of control. It is out of control. I'll give your uncle that.
So trim it. You don't have to get rid of it.
Now, this is a little crazy.
So the whole thing is coming off.
The whole thing. I'm
You're
going
gonna
back to
look like
baby
you're
face.
14. You're gonna look like you're 14 years old.
That's it. Look at this gray. It's not a touch of gray. It's just gray.
Bro, don't talk to me about gray. All right? You ain't got none compared to some people on this stream right now.
Oh man.
So don't give me that nonsense. So as people are coming in right now, we blasted this out to a whole bunch. Check out the poll that we have going on. It's going to have to do with our first topic. So it's going to be asking, why do Chinese spies gravitate to Democrats? We got a couple of votes in there already. The choices are, number one, animal magnetism, because we all know that Democrats are just the beautiful people of the world. They're easy marks. I reject the question's premise, and common beliefs. Right now, it looks like easy mark is in the lead, but we'll keep checking in on that during the show. Ross, if you go into the chat, you can go in and put your vote in there, but why don't you influence the vote, interfere with the vote, and tell everybody what you would vote for?
No, I mean that's a great question, Gene. Like I'm curious what your thoughts are. Right? Are they just useful idiots? Is that even possible? That the Democratic Party are just they're dumb. Don't get me wrong. But could we just chalk it up to them being that stupid, right? These things keep happening with Democrats who are in power somewhere in our country, right? And just like we've talked about with the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, there's only so much that you could chalk up to incompetence or they didn't know, right? Like, I think there's something more here.
I think so as well. By the way, the term useful idiot has its origins in communism. It has
From leftism, correct.
I believe Lenin used to call the proletariat useful idiots, or those blind supporters that he would have. Yeah. Was it Lenin or was it someone else? I think it was Lenin.
It was one of the Russian, Lenin, one of them, Stalin, one of them.
It was one of them. It was one. Screw those guys. It was one of them. But we do. I think we have to open the show up talking about. Well, we have this phrase here, People's Republic of New York. You can use that hashtag if you guys want to. Ross and I have been using this to describe New York City, New York State. In fact, if you look over my shoulder here, you can actually see it on this big-ass banner, live from the People's Republic of New York City. We've been saying this for decades, but little did we know, Ross, that while we used it as an insult, Democrats kind of took it as a challenge in New York.
Yeah. I mean, Gene, and did you see what the woman was actually accused of doing with this money? Like, she's pushing conspiracy theories against Donald Trump that he's not conservative enough, like really like trying to influence our election, if you will. I know the Attorney General of the United States was just talking about another Russia hoax that they're trying to interfere in our election this time around. But the Democrats got caught red-handed, pardon the pun, once again.
Absolutely. For those of you who don't know what we're talking about the recent indictment of a woman named Linda Sun and her husband, Christopher Hu. He's not on first, but he's certainly in the Chinese Communist Party, as the DOJ has brought espionage charges against both of them. The reason why this is a big deal is Linda's son has been a decade-long employee in the governor's mansion in the People's Republic of New York. Let's let ABC News explain the basics of the charges, then we'll delve a little deeper.
Aide to two New York governors has been arrested and charged with spying for China. Authorities searching the Long Island home of Linda Sun and her husband, Chris Hu, Federal prosecutors say the couple received millions in kickbacks from China and laundered the monetary proceeds to buy the mansion in Manhasset, New York for $3.5 million, a condominium in Honolulu, Hawaii for nearly $2 million, and various luxury automobiles, including a Ferrari.
Now, for those of you who don't know New York State, Long Island, Manhasset, pretty ritzy area. They have big properties, big pieces of land, that a vacation house in Honolulu, a brand new Ferrari, and she was supposed to be a civil servant, making good money, I'm sure, 6 figures, something like that, right, Ross? What the hell here? Nope, this didn't bring up any alarm bells for anyone in government?
She got promoted to one of Governor Hochul's top aides.
How does this happen, though, that there isn't a disclosure check, there isn't a conflict of interest check, there's no vetting? What the hell here?
Well, she was also in charge, Gene, of DEI practices in the state of New York for quite a while, starting out in the borough of Queens, right? So once you have that DEI shield, you're kind of untouchable. What are they going to say? You might have ties to the Chinese Communist Party. She looks Asian to me, right? Democrats can't say that about someone. No one can, right? She's in charge of DEI, for God's sake.
It's interesting that you brought that up, because I did find that I wasn't planning on putting this video up, but I believe I did find another video that didn't make the cut for this morning's show. But here's exactly what you're talking about.
I think, when people say diversity and inclusion, I think everybody agrees, or most people generally agree, that it's a good thing, right? But I think right now we also need to bring in the word equity, right? Diversity is when you say that there's, many different types of people with different backgrounds, and they're all, invited to the table. Inclusion is when, we include all of their ideas. But equity is when we make sure that all of the people who are at the table have equal access to making sure that their ideas and their thoughts are heard. And unfortunately, I think some of the statistics that you quoted is that we don't have that much leadership or representation.
Okay, so it cuts off there, but DEI has its roots in socialism and in communism. So the fact that she gets to talk about DEI now freely while being a member of, not only just a member of the governor's staff, but for Kathy Hochul, she was deputy chief of staff. That's a pretty high up position. That's influencing policy. That's influencing the elected official.
Yes, and people need to wake up, Gene. Why would the Chinese Communist Party be pushing spies in our country to push equity, right? You just touched on it. Where does equity come from? Forget about diversity and inclusion, right? Because diversity and inclusion to the left is only diversity based on certain people's skin colors, not all. And inclusion is only certain people that they want at the table, not all. And then equity, right? Where does equity come from? Equality of outcomes, not equality of opportunity. That is a very communist, socialist, left-wing, extreme left-wing, right? Which is where the Democratic Party really is today. And why would China push that? Well, I'll let the listeners decide, I guess. I just wanted to make one other point on this, G, which I think is pretty funny. A brief history of governors of the state of New York, starting with Eliot Spitzer, went down in flames, right? What was he accused of? Wasn't he? I know it had something to do with prostitution, and there was some other stuff that he was accused of.
Oh, yeah, he was client number 9. If you remember, he had a high-ticket call girl named, I believe it was Ashley Dupree was her name. And while he was married, he was stepping out with this call girl, got identified as client number 9 in some sort of charges against Dupree. And the effing steamroller, as he called himself, about running through policy, got stopped himself.
Then briefly followed by, I believe it was Governor Patterson, who's actually a stand-up guy. Then Andrew Cuomo, who thought he'd be president one day.
I need to correct you on one thing. Patterson also had his own scandals in taking not necessarily bribes, but gifts from people, including Yankee tickets. And I believe he decided not to run again because of that.
And I think he also came out and admitted a lot of stuff up front. So it wasn't like a big shocker with him.
Right.
If I'm not mistaken.
Right.
He's the least of them, because then you get followed up by Andrew Cuomo, who was basically sexually assaulting members of his own staff and security detail. And now you have Governor Hochul, who has Chinese spies in her inner circle. Like, New York is in trouble, man.
I'll give you a staggering statistic that I always give when it comes to governors in the People's Republic of New York. The last governor to be voted out of office is Mario Cuomo when George Pataki beat him. Pataki chose not to run. He had his own scandals at the end as well. Since Mario Cuomo, when we were just little itty bitty babies, there hasn't been a governor voted out of office or termed out or anything like that without scandal. How crazy is that?
I never even thought of that. That's brilliant and unbelievable at the same time.
Yeah, well, let's continue on with the charges against Linda's son.
Worked for former Governor Andrew Cuomo and his successor, Governor Kathy Hochul, for more than a decade and never disclosed any benefits she received. Instead, prosecutors say she acted as an undisclosed agent of China, allegedly blocking representatives of the Taiwanese government from having access to the New York State Governor's office and changing the governor's messaging regarding issues of importance to the Chinese.
Can you believe that? This woman is usurping the will of the people. She is changing policy that was set by the duly elected governor. Say what you want about who it may have been, whether it be Cuomo or Hochul. They were duly elected. And when it came to China, she was changing policy. This is something out of a spy novel.
Yeah, well, it's even worse, Gene. When people like me, I'm not going to include you in this, so I'll give you some plausible deniability. When people like me claim that there is truly a deep state and they are running the country and it's not the figureheads that we elect, this is Exhibit A, if you will, right? It's an underling of an elected official who floated between different administrations that affected policy or changed policy from the decision makers that she worked for. That happens at every level of government, and God willing, Donald Trump carries through on his promise when he wins, and doesn't just get rid of the heads of multiple departments and agencies. You have to go several layers deep to weed out these deep state actors whose allegiance is not to the people that have elected the electeds or the electeds themselves.
And I'll go a step further, and you may not like where I'm going with this, but this is also what happens with term limits. So if you hate deep state and you hate bureaucracy, just imagine what would happen if you have members of Congress that are set to fixed terms and they can't run again. You're going to have more and more entrenched bureaucracy because there's no term limit on bureaucracy. You're going to end up with the same thing in the legislature as you do in the executive. This is an extreme example, yes, but clearly this is not just Exhibit A, Ross. This is Exhibit double Z at this point, because we've seen it at all levels of government, not necessarily to this degree, but we've seen deep state bureaucracy, entrenched bureaucracy, running things. Going back to the news story now.
To China, as seen in this photo included in the indictment where...
Wait, you were going to say something. Go ahead.
I just want to say, Gene, that was an interesting take on term limits that I've never thought about. And it's definitely food for thought, right? Because now, if you did impose term limits on congressmen, right, not only would you have these deep state actors that never go away, ex-congressmen would either become lobbyists like they already do, or just go work as the chief of staff for a newly elected congressman that took his place possibly. So I don't even know if term limits would get rid of this problem. Brilliant. I have to put some more thought into that.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I've thought about for a while, because I know we have this debate about term limits all the time and how I think the best term limit is voting the guy out. I mean, we're at the 15 minutes, voting the fucker out. So that's always been kind of like my argument here about why we don't want term limits in our legislature, because we already see when a Democrat wins, they have their staff that's handpicked by the party, either in D.C. or in the district. Then a Republican does the same thing when they're elected in. When they switch back, what happens? The same staff that was hired for Congressman A now is working for Congressman B as soon as that party gets reelected again. It's the same staffers, and it makes sense. They have experience at the job. That's what you'll end up getting, and that's why the deep state is such an insidious threat throughout government. Now, with executives, we have the necessary evil of term limits, But with the legislature, this becomes an even bigger problem because then you have bureaucracy interfacing with bureaucracy, and you have 2/3 of government now that are just entrenched in this morass of deep state actors, possibly some insidious as well. Let's get back to the video. We got to move through this, otherwise we're not going to bed anytime soon. So here we go.
Says she met with officials from the Chinese Communist Party. She and her family also allegedly received gifts from China, including tickets to shows, concerts, and events, as well as salted ducks prepared by a Chinese government official's personal chef. Son is a naturalized U.S. citizen who was born in China and rose to become Hochul's deputy chief of staff. Late today, Hochul responding.
I'm furious and I'm outraged and absolutely shocked at how brazen her behavior was. It was a betrayal of trust, the trust of government, the trust of the people. And I'll tell you this, the second we discovered some levels of misconduct, we fired her.
And a representative for former Governor Cuomo saying that while he was in office, Son had little to no interaction with the governor.
Yeah, right. We're going to call bullshit on that in a second. But Ross, salted duck, your thoughts?
Oh, that was, Gene, brilliant. It was kind of racist, I might say.
You know, I wasn't thinking of the race element of that. Here's what I wanted to kind of go into. Communist leader has a personal chef. How does that happen in a system where everybody's supposed to be equals? And, you know, there isn't this division of classes between the millionaires and the billionaires and the people and all that. How does that happen?
Well, it's the same way the oligarchy controls our country, right? Every elected official of both parties, their kids go to Ivy League schools. None of them go to public school, right? That's unheard of. Most of them have either security provided to them by the government, or they use campaign funding to provide for their own security, so they can run around saying like things like defund the police and other idiotic things. It's more pervasive on the Democratic side of the aisle, but Republicans do the same shit.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But my whole thing is the hypocrisy of even practicing communists now. Apparently, some communists are more equal than others. Maybe Orwell was right.
Yeah, I mean, are you shocked? Bernie Sanders has more houses than you will ever have, right? Like, and he's supposedly a communist or a socialist, whatever he's calling himself these days.
Yeah, well, listen, we'll all get there. We'll have 6 and 7 mansions by the time we get there, especially the way inflation's going. But I do want to focus on the end of that clip. The talk about Governor Cuomo saying, I barely knew the broad. How is that possible when she was running point during the pandemic with Chinese officials, with PRC officials, to arrange for ventilators to come to the People's Republic of New York? On page 17 of the indictment, I'm going to try to pull it up while I'm talking here. On page 17 of the indictment, we see a discussion by the Department of Justice concerning Governor Cuomo's interactions with Son. I'm pulling it up right now, but if you think back to the pandemic, Ross, do you remember all of those daily COVID updates from Cuomo?
Yes, and when he was bragging about buying all those millions of masks, and a lot of them turned out to be defective from China. Yeah, I remember.
Absolutely. It was ventilate. We were shopping for ventilators, and it was PPE and all that. So I'm going to let me see if I can try to pull this up here. I'm doing this on the fly, folks. Dun, 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 dun. And I found it, and let me see if I can get it up on the screen in any meaningful way. Yes, I push the buttons, and I make the show go. There's nobody here but me, because Galloway is lazy. Let's see. Here it is right here. Let's pull this up right now. Everybody see that on the screen? Let me make sure. This is page 17 of the indictment. We're looking at paragraph 28. We looked at this, by the way, on the morning show for This Week in Dumbmocracy as well. Let me see if I can get everybody a better view of it. Let me see if I can get... Here we go. Fit with. That should probably do it, I hope. Wait for it to... There it goes. Okay. So... On April 3rd, 2020, PRC official 1, that is a Chinese communist official, wrote to the defendant, Linda Sun, this is the woman we've been talking about, that several Chinese foundations would donate 1,000 ventilators to the Greater New York Hospital Association. Sun informed PRC official 1 that politician 1, who has to be Cuomo, would call PRC official 1 to thank PRC official 1. After waiting for 2 hours, Cuomo never called. And the official started complaining to Sun. Sun told the official that Cuomo was in a meeting with the Department of Health commissioner and apologized for wasting the official's time. Later on, she indicated that Cuomo would call the following day, and the official instructed Sun to remind Cuomo to thank the PRC government for facilitating the donation, which happened on April 4th, the next day. We'll come back to that in a moment, because now I have for you, and for everyone's viewing pleasure, that part of the daily COVID announcements from Cuomo, where he did just that. He followed to the letter Linda Sun's reminder that came from the PRC to thank them for their donation.
China is remarkably the repository for all of these orders, ventilators, PPE, it all goes back to China, which long term, we have to figure out why we wound up in this situation where we don't have the manufacturing capacity in this country. I understand supply chain issues, I understand the cost of manufacturing, but there's a public health reason, as we've all learned the hard way, why we need the capacity in this country to do this. But anyway, it all comes back to China. So New York has been shopping in China. We're not really China experts here. International relations is not what we do on a daily basis.
Yeah, no shit, you're not China relations experts, considering you have a damn spy in your midst. Come on. We're getting to the good part, though, and let's get to it.
Basis. I've been to China before. When I was HUD Secretary, I did a trade mission with China, so I have a basic understanding, but we went to the Asia Society to help us navigate China. I asked the White House to help us navigate China. I spoke to the ambassador, and we got really good news today that the Chinese government is going to facilitate a donation of 1,000 ventilators.
Now, take a look. You see the card next to Cuomo? All those names there, Joe Tsai, Jack Ma, Ambassador Wang, all Chinese Communist Party officials being thanked in America for their donation, all because they reminded Cuomo to do this through his staff, who happened to be an alleged spy.
That will come into JFK today. And I want to thank Joe Tsai and Clara Tsai and Jack Ma from Alibaba and the Nets, but I'm not stating a preference, for their donation. That's going to be very helpful, and I want to thank Ambassador Wang very much for his help in making all of this happen, because this is a big deal, and it's going to make a significant difference for us.
There you go. We are bringing the indictment to life. We've matched up the video to that portion of the indictment where Cuomo was played like a fiddle.
Gene, I want to say that was excellent work piecing that together, because I was getting a little nervous as you were reading the indictment, assuming that Cuomo was politician one. Brilliant job. I just want to make sure I have this story straight. Just correct me if I'm wrong. So Andrew Cuomo had a Chinese spy working for him. China, the country, created, leaked, or sent the coronavirus into the United States, really devastating New York, Governor Cuomo's state. Cuomo was shopping for PPE from the same country, China. And then we got some donations on top of it, right, to sprinkle in. I just want to make sure I'm tracking so far.
You left one thing out, though. And then we paid Chinese-controlled companies for all the logistical stuff in providing whatever we were purchasing. So they got the purchase, and then their companies got paid for delivery as well.
and you can't do business in China unless the business is more than half owned by the Chinese Communist Party. So it went to the government there, right?
Oh, yes. For everybody who doesn't know, there's this idea in Chinese business called the golden share. And the golden share is the option of the Communist Party to exercise their control over the management of that business. You may have heard about this when talking about TikTok, and the Senate was having their hearings about the control and ownership of TikTok and its parent company ByteDance when there was discussion about banning TikTok. So yes, you're exactly right in saying that they are majority owned by the Chinese Communist Party. So you got the Chinese Communist Party controlling the business, you got the Chinese Communist Party controlling the government, and then you have the spy within the American government and the state government in this point, influencing and modifying policy to be favorable to both China and the Chinese-owned businesses.
You nailed it. So, Gene, the other thing I just want to bring to people's attention is this. Governor Walz, candidate for vice president, also has a China problem, right? He spent lots of years there. He honeymooned there. He worked there for many years. Something like 30 trips to China over the course of his adult life, which is kind of crazy. Also the governor of a state. So let's put the tinfoil hats on for a second here.
Oh, wait, hang on. I'm prepared. Hang on, I'm prepared for this. Hang on. There we go. I'm here.
Beautiful.
What's up?
Now, is it far-fetched to think that China and other adversaries are planting people at the state level with the hopes? At that time, if you remember, since we're going back into the COVID days, Cuomo was being seriously bandied about as a future president of the United States.
Yes, he was.
This woman would have rode the coattails right into a federal job, right?
Most likely.
You don't think China's doing that at the state level with Gavin Newsom and Tim Walz and Andrew Cuomo and Kathy Hochul, and it's only a matter of time for Gretchen Whitmer's China scandal comes out. You're crazy. It's definitely happening. And the last thing I want to say on this topic, Gene, and this one doesn't need the hat.
Okay.
That's getting hard.
Coming off. Gotta get the shine from the bald head coming back now.
Oh, man. So the last thing I want to say on this was the frustration that we have with many things, and we were talking about this with the Biden administration not long ago. So who gets fired, right? The one person who they caught eventually, right? But who's her boss, right? You could say it's Hochul now, but is she a direct report to the governor? If she is, we got a real problem. If she's not
fired, she's been fired. Let's make that clear. She's no longer there anymore.
She has been, yes, but
when there's one cockroach, there are many others you don't see.
Who's her boss? Who was her supervisor? Who did she report to on a daily basis? The buck never stops with the person above. Whenever somebody gets fired, which is few and far between in this game, it's always the lowest dude, right? The Secret Service eventually will discipline someone, and I guarantee you it's going to be a very low-level person for the botched Trump assassination, right? But who's that person's boss?
They cut the weeds. They don't pull them out by the roots. That's absolutely true. But if you were asking who her boss was, it clearly was PRC Official 1. That's who she was reporting to.
But on
That's
paper here, she reports to someone, right? She calls someone sir or ma'am in that chain of command there.
Yeah.
Who's that person that didn't know that this person was getting all these gifts and not complying with the law to disclose?
And not for nothing, where are all of the watchdog groups within government? Like, in the People's Republic of New York City, it's the conflict of interest board, right? The COIB.
Yeah.
There's something equivalent to that on the state level as well. There are mandatory disclosures for people who go into government that they have to disclose certain income they have. They have to disclose, the origin of some of their finances and things like that. Where was the oversight within government?
They only oversee Republicans in that state.
And you know what else? It's bureaucracy watching bureaucracy. Who's watching the watchmen, right? We're relying on bureaucracy to be honorable in policing itself. It's against human nature. It doesn't work that way. And that's the biggest problem we have, is that government, and indeed our whole system of government, whether it's federal, state, or local, you can have all the rules in the world. It's all reliant upon good faith and an unspoken trust between people. When that trust is broken, everything goes to shit.
I just want to know, Gene, what did politician one know, and when did he know it? Right? Because that seems to me like he or she, Cuomo, should be an unindicted co-conspirator at this point and maybe actually get indicted.
Or at the very least, have to answer these questions when he plans to run for mayor of the People's Republic of New York City. And I guarantee you, and you know what, maybe I'll make a Ross Galloway prediction. I don't think anybody's going to ask him about this by this time next year when he's running for mayor. And I think he's definitely running for mayor, without a doubt in my mind.
I'm on record as saying a long time ago, you could say he's going to run for mayor. He probably will. That man will run for president in our lifetime. I can guarantee you that. It's a guarantee.
Lord help us all if he does that. Folks, we are at halftime here on the show. We normally do an hour here on the YouTube, on the Twitters, or X, or whatever we call it these days, and on Rumble. I'm Gene. He's Ross. Thanks for checking us out. We are Behind Enemy Lines. If you have questions for us, drop it in the chat. I'm going to try to monitor the Rumble chat and Twitter, but I get YouTube sent right to the studio. So if you're on the YouTubes, you want to talk to us, we're happy to talk to just about anyone. Are you wearing the Ross Galloway was right shirt?
I had to put it on, Gene.
Show the people, because, folks, we do have merch. This goes back to last week's show. You know, Ross Galloway was right. Would you want to wear this on your body? Let us know in the comments or however you want to get in touch with us. But in the meantime, you check out all the great merch at shop.buffoonoftheweek.com as well. It's a great way to support the show, in addition to liking, sharing, subscribing, all the good stuff we normally talk about here on the YouTubes and on the Rumbles that we like people to do. All right, let's keep... Well, wait, I just saw a comment pop up. Okay, Deborah likes the shirt, Ross. She might... Maybe she might want to pick it up. I don't know. Might be worth doing. But yes, Ross Galloway was right. I have a feeling we're going to be seeing a lot of that throughout the life of this show. Let's move on to the big news that happened this evening. If you want to call it big news, it goes right up there with sky being blue and water being wet. Trump derangement-addled Liz Cheney has decided to endorse Kamala Harris for president. The Cheney family has gone dark, and it's kind of what you would expect. Liz Cheney was at Duke University this evening. This video came out from there. This is one of those videos made on a camera, so it may not be the best quality, but check this out.
Because we're here in North Carolina, I think it is crucially important for people to recognize not only is what I just said about the danger that Trump poses something that should prevent people from voting for him, but I don't believe that we have the luxury of writing in candidates' names, particularly in swing states. And as a conservative, as someone who believes in and cares about the Constitution, I have thought deeply about this, and because of the danger that Donald Trump poses, not only am I not voting for Donald Trump, but I will be voting for Kamala Harris.
She's voting for Kamala Harris. What a shocker here.
If you can, Gene, I just dropped the tweet in the share screen box there, if you can put it up.
Sure, absolutely. Let me pull that up for you.
So while you're pulling that up, this was a tweet that Liz Cheney sent out in 2020.
Okay, you know what? It's being cut off by the banner. Give me 1 second here because I can fix that for you. Put that back up again. You can put it back up the way it was.
Yeah, right.
See, maybe we shouldn't give you buttons because this is what happens.
It's not as easy as it looks, people.
Okay, there. That's good. No, okay, right there. Kamala Harris is a radical liberal who would raise taxes, take away guns and health insurance, and explode the size and power of the federal government. She wants to recreate America in the image of what's happening on the streets of Portland and Seattle. Remember the Summer of Love, everyone? We can't give her the chance. Well, that certainly sounds like a reasonable conservative take, doesn't it?
This is what exhibit are we on for Trump derangement syndrome, right? This
Yeah.
woman has lost it.
Well, not for nothing. Why not just say I'm anti-Trump instead of going pro-Harris? Why does she have to go all the way there?
Yeah. Well, let me tell you why, Gene. Because Liz Cheney is part of the Romney, Bush, Cheney, McCain, Rhino scumbag wing of the Republican Party, right? They were always, they're the neocons that are pro forever war and had a lot of us fooled for many years, right? And this is why a lot of us are Donald Trump fans. And I keep saying that the party's dead after Trump, right? Because Liz Cheney can't articulate why she doesn't like Donald Trump. Maybe because he was a threat to democracy on January 6th. That's absurd, right? They destroyed their own records from that fake sham of a committee. She got handpicked by Nancy Pelosi to even be on that committee because she wouldn't let the Republican leadership select Republicans to sit on that select committee for January 6th, right? So she's part of that scumbag rhino wing of the party that we want nothing to do with. Good riddance.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. And by the way, if you didn't see Ross's tweet, or maybe you think that, well, she said that back in 2020 or whatever, we actually have her saying the exact same thing on video back when Kamala Harris was selected as Joe Biden's running mate. Not only did she tweet it, she was going out on the airwaves saying the exact same thing.
As somebody who is a centrist, and in one fell swoop here, he has put somebody on the ticket whose voting record in the Senate is to the left of Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. So I think that, the American people are going to look at the substance of this. They're going to look at what she stood for in the past. They're going to look at what she said during the primary election. And it's very clear. She is a radical liberal. She's somebody that has said we ought to spend $32 trillion on Medicare for all. If you look at her record as well in California, she did, in fact, essentially ban gun sales with executive action. And she threatened during the primaries to do the same thing if she's elected, if she's faced.
So if she's elected, she'll ban guns. She is, to the left of Bernie Sanders. But now, because your brain is freaking marshmallows, you're saying I'm going to vote for her. Yeah. I don't. You know what? Diana says it best. TDS is a real sickness.
And it's so irrational, Gene. And this woman is so out of step with the new mainstream of the Republican Party, is that she has the last name of a former vice president. She's related to him, I think, right? Daughter of a former vice president. Who was in government forever. She was an incumbent, and she lost her primary election, right? That's how out of step she is. And that's how much of a rhino she really is, right? She was in a Republican district, lost in her primary as an incumbent, right? So who cares who she endorses or what she thinks? She's insane.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Who is going to be swayed by a Liz Cheney endorsement of Kamala Harris? Are there rhinos out there that weren't already voting for Harris that this endorsement moves any needle whatsoever?
Impossible. It's impossible. And I have yet to hear anyone. Does she have a policy page on her website yet, Kamala Harris? I don't even think she does.
It's interesting that you brought that up. No, I don't believe so. I believe that President Trump has his own policy section. It has like 20 different points on it. I don't think that Kamala Harris has any policy. More importantly, Kamala Harris doesn't even know what she's going to do day one. And
before you go there,
yeah, go ahead.
I know you're doing a setup there, and that's great.
Yeah, I'm trying to do a segue. I'm trying to be professional. I'm trying to do segues. Galloway's like, fuck it, I gotta say what I gotta say. So I just roll with the punches. Go ahead, man.
No, you know what? Do it. We'll do it after. Play that video. That's good.
Thanks for the permission. I really appreciate it, pal. This is a video that we created as a short for our YouTube channel. It's embiggened for your pleasure. Check out this little, I would call it a parody, but it's not really a parody. She actually said these things these way.
What would you do on day one in the White House?
Give us answers now.
There are a number of things. I will tell you, first and foremost, one of my highest priorities is to do what we can to support and strengthen the middle class.
What exactly does that mean?
When I look at the aspirations, the goals, the ambitions of the American people, I think that people are ready for a new way forward.
Can't you just give me a straight answer for once?
In a way that generations of Americans have been fueled by hope and by optimism.
Spouting a bunch of meaningless platitudes.
I think, sadly, in the last decade, we have had in the former president someone who has really been pushing an agenda.
This isn't about him. This is about you.
So what would you do day one?
Day one, it's going to be about, one, implementing my plan.
Just say it!
It's called political buffoonery.
Just say it! That's all we've been asking for over 40 days now. Just tell us what you mean. What policies are you for? Do we have to go back to 2020 to go back and say what you were for? But you were for it then. Are you against it now? It's like a campaign made up totally of platitudes. It's all it is, Ross.
Yes. And it's unbelievable how there's no self-awareness from people like Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney sat on the January 6th committee, right? She's running around saying that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. She's one of the few people still saying that. She's now supporting a person who got no votes in a Democratic primary ever. She replaced someone named Joe Biden, who supposedly got 81 million votes, the most of any president in the history of the United States, who dropped out of the race and was replaced in a coup with Kamala Harris. And this is the person Liz Cheney is supporting. And where is Joe Biden now? I saw him today. He's sitting at the little desk, the kid's desk, across the street from the White House, again, rambling and being shuffled off without answering questions from the media. This is what Liz Cheney has thrown her lot with. Insanity.
Absolute insanity. But you asked about policy, and you asked about what does Kamala Harris stand for. We saw some of it maybe in the CNN interview. She claims, and we're doing this as we look forward to the debates, and Deborah chimed in and says she can't wait for this debate. Well, let's take a look at what Kamala Harris is saying now about what you can trust about what she has said in the past, I guess. Get ready for some word salad, folks. Break out your spoons and forks here.
How should voters look at some of the changes that you've made, that you've explained some of here in your policy? Is it because you have more experience now and you've learned more about the information? Is it because you were running for president in a Democratic primary? And should they feel comfortable and confident that what you're saying now is going to be your policy moving forward?
Dana, I think the most important and most significant aspect of my policy perspective and decisions is my values have not changed. You mentioned the Green New Deal. I have always believed, and I have worked on it, that the climate crisis is real, that it is an urgent matter to which we should apply metrics that include holding ourselves to deadlines around time. We did that with the Inflation Reduction Act. We have set goals for the United States of America and, by extension, the globe.
Seems like you're chomping at the bit to talk right now, Ross. I saw you getting the Kamala Harris shoulder shrugging going on.
The shoulder shrugging. No, it's just funny, G. Like deadlines around time. What other deadlines are there? What is a deadline if it's not around time? Well, I don't understand. And then,
true.
You know what's her other thing she's always running around saying? Because she said her values has not changed, right? But what does she always say? She's actually still using it, which is unreal because she got made fun of so much for this. Unburdened by what has been. By what has been your position like a few months ago? Is that what we're unburdened by? Unburdened by you being the current vice president and could have done some of the things you say you're going to do? We want to look forward and not backward. How far backward should we not look? Like 3 weeks ago backward when you were the vice president, or today when you're still the vice president?
We don't know what she stands for because she told us that she was against fracking, and she hasn't really said that she's for it, but she claims that she said that she was for it. She didn't say that during, if you remember back to the 2020 debate, Kamala Harris, on the issue of fracking, originally said when she was running for president in 2020 that she was against fracking. When she became Biden's running mate, she only talked about Joe Biden's position on fracking, did not talk about her own, but then claimed in this interview on CNN, this very friendly interview, that she has always been consistent in her policy position as a part of this administration and going forward, yet she never actually uttered the words. Same thing with her position on defunding the police. She was bailing out members of BLM during the Summer of Love. She was for defunding the police, and then she was not for it. There are many inconsistent policy points here that a Trump can really attack in this debate. Let's talk about debate strategies, because we actually have talked about this at great length over the years about the best way to handle everything. Would you agree that for this debate, allowing Kamala Harris to speak as much as possible can only help Trump?
Absolutely. And he has to be disciplined with, like we've said this before, with a few factoids, right? And then throw it at her when it's his time. Donald Trump did a good job in the debate with Joe Biden. Very good job. Right. I wouldn't say
I'll get back to that in a second. Go ahead.
What I'm saying is, look at who he was facing, right? So maybe if he was facing like a skilled debater, it wouldn't have appeared as good. But Donald Trump, in his own bandwidth, did pretty good, right? He was much more reserved than usual. And the one piece of advice I would give him again is, who cares what the question is from the moderator? No one cares what the moderator is asking. When you have your time, and I'm a big fan of this muted microphone thing, you answer the question you want to answer. It doesn't matter how they frame it or even what the question is. Donald Trump was masterful at that with the debate with Joe Biden. He kept going back. He said, you know what? I'm going to use some of this time to go back to the last question. And then he would articulate his point and then give a little throwaway answer for that. And he was always playing catch up with the questions, but that's what he's going to have to do with Kamala, right? Because no one's going to fact check her in real time. She's going to say whatever she thinks is the right thing to say at that moment in time. And Trump's going to have to call her out with fact of, no, you said this, not only in 2020, but you were part of an administration that did X, Y, and Z. You were the last person in the room in Afghanistan. You said you were the last person in the room for most major decisions there. You were the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Act, right? Not the Inflation Reduction Act, but the Inflation Act that caused this massive inflation. That's what he needs to do in this debate.
He needs to do that. And I think what you're talking about is building a theme for his answers throughout the night. A good theme is, what does this person stand for? Stay away from all the nonsense about like what happened in Arlington Cemetery. Stay away from, is she black or is she Indian? Stay away from all those gotchas. Stay away from the I'm speaking and interrupting her, because that's a trap that she's going to use based upon her gender. Stick to the theme of Kamala the chameleon. She doesn't stand for anything, and therefore you'll fall for anything she says. Vibes are not policy. Hope is not a strategy. What are her plans? Will she want to take away guns like she did in California? Will she want to impose a draconian climate scheme that punishes Americans for being good but allows other nations like China and India and others to continue to be bad actors? What is going to be her policy for foreign policy, given that the world is on fire because of this administration? The best political cartoon I saw this week was a cartoon of Kamala Harris as a lifeguard, standing on a chair talking to a bunch of people saying, when I become lifeguard, I'm going to do, but someone screams out at her, but you're already the lifeguard, and then points to a pool of people who are drowning with phrases like inflation, like phrases like foreign policy, like phrases like Israel and Ukraine and things like that. Things that were created by this administration. Trump needs to push back on records and remind people that things went bad in my administration at the end because of a pandemic, not because of what Kamala Harris would say is mismanagement. And then let them know you don't get brownie points for fixing crises that you yourself create. And remind people who created the crisis in the Afghanistan withdrawal, who created a world on fire and allowed Russia to invade Ukraine by saying out loud in a press conference, well, it could be a little bit of a takeover, not so much of a takeover. The theme has to be tying Harris to this administration's decisions and not falling into the traps, which means she has to have a mastery of what is being said and what the issues are, and sort of tone down Trump being Trump.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what you're saying in a nutshell, right? So she's in her opening statement, she's going to give her a brief background and her resume again. And she's done this a few times already. And her resume includes all the things she's done in California as attorney general and then a senator from the state. But she keeps leaving out her best job. She is the sitting vice president of the United States, right? So Trump needs to nail her on that she is actually an incumbent in this race. She's not the outsider coming to stop Donald Trump, the incumbent. Donald Trump's been out of office for almost 4 years now, 3.5 years, right? She is the incumbent. And I would ask her at least one gotcha question, just to, I wouldn't call her stupid. I'd just show that she is stupid, right? If the subject of fracking comes up, no matter what she says her current position is, when it would be my time to speak, I would simply say, I'm going to give her the rest of my time to describe what fracking actually is. She's so against it, or she has a position on it. Describe to us what fracking is. I can guarantee you Kamala Harris does not know what fracking is. She has no clue. She is not I feel like we live in a simulation, right? In no real world would Kamala Harris be a candidate for president of the United States. Love or hate Hillary Clinton, love or hate Barack Obama, they were not stupid people, right? They were smart people. We didn't agree with them on a lot of things, but they were not stupid people. Kamala Harris and even Joe Biden is a pretty stupid person. They're both pretty stupid, right? Joe Biden was never a smart man. Don't let the dementia fool you towards the end. Pull up clips from him in the 90s or the 80s. He was never smart. He just spoke a little faster.
Oh, yeah, the accusations of plagiarism against him and stealing writing from speeches and how he didn't get out of primaries back in the 90s because he was that dumb. Absolutely. We are trending towards idiocracy. Last thought on the debate. I want to get your thoughts about the venue and the choice of moderators at ABC. Is Trump once again playing 3-on-1 here?
Well, he's always going to play 3-on-1. I mean, that's a given. I thought the media was again dishonest. How he agreed to debate rules, and no one thought he would agree to them the first time with the muted microphones. And then Kamala's been running around saying, and through her staff, that Trump is afraid of a real-time give and take with the microphones not being muted. If you just go back to what you said earlier with her debate with Mike Pence, obviously she needs the microphones muted, right? She wants to get that gotcha moment of I'm speaking here, trying to make a white man look stupid on TV. Like, I get it. That's what the Democrats are all about. A woman of color putting a white man in his place. Got it. Like, good for you. Back then you did that. And she wants to do that desperately with Trump, right? But if she was speaking and she wanted her time to speak, why not have the microphones muted, right? Just have it. Because I would say, let's not mute the microphones, but let's not have a moderator then at all. Throw a topic up on a screen and just have at it.
We've always talked about this. I think that's the way to go. Just put an issue there and let's see what comes to mind to the candidate to speak. By the way, the moderators for this debate are going to be David Weir from, I believe it's the ABC World News show that is on daily on the ABC network, and Lindsay Davis, who I'm not totally familiar with, but if they work for George Snuffleupagus, I'm always suspect of them. So that's just my feelings on this. The last thing I want to say about this, and I kind of alluded to this earlier when you were talking about how good of a night Trump had against Biden. I don't know if he had such a good night as it was that Joe Biden had such a horrendous night. I think Trump needs to go to school. on these issues. Maybe that's why he's not out and about recently. I think he needs some serious debate prep. And, I have heard this, but I haven't confirmed it, that Tulsi Gabbard is actually on his debate prep team. Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, I've been hearing that. I think it's helpful. She did a few events with him too, where she was the moderator at a town hall, and I thought that went very well. But at the end of the day, I don't care what anyone says. Trump is Trump. He's not doing debate prep in any classic sense. He's not like pretending that she's on the stage with him. I believe him when he says, his best debate prep is just going out there speaking to the media and doing rallies. I believe that.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, J.D. Vance did confirm that Tulsi Gabbard is coaching Donald Trump in the debate, and who better than the Kamala Slayer to help him out? I think that's a great thing, and we'll see what happens next week. Now, just a programming note: we are not going to be doing a live stream of the debate. We will be coming back the next day on our normal date and time. It's going to happen to be September 11th as well, discussing this debate, and I'm sure we're going to have a tribute to and a remembrance of September 11th as well. So just quick programming note there for everybody on the debate. It's that time, pal. It's final thought time. I made sure we had a lot of time left at the end of the show because before the show, we were talking about so many different freaking things that we could talk about as a final thought. So do you want to go first or second? You want me to flip a coin? What do you want me to do?
No, I'll go first so you can close it down properly.
It doesn't matter to me. You can close. I'm like the appetizer. You're the main course.
No nonsense. So let me just preface my final thought with this. You might have heard today that the Attorney General, I kind of mentioned it earlier, was talking about they believe Russia and Iran are trying to influence our election, right? Russia again. Okay, sure. And Iran. The reason why I wanted to just bring this up before I roll into the final thought was Iran is behind a lot of the stuff going on in Israel. They fund, Hezbollah and Hamas. Iran is behind the Houthis who bomb American bases scattered throughout the Middle East. Iran killed lots of people during the Iraq war through improvised explosive devices. And Iran now is supposedly trying to interfere in our elections, right? Remember, the Biden-Harris administration gave Iran, I think it was upwards of $600 billion or something like that for the Iran nuclear deal, right? That's another thing that Harris needs to be held accountable for, right? You can't say you're going to make nuclear deals with these rogue states. And then Iran also was supposedly threatening to kill President Trump, right? So Iran has all these things wrong with them, but we're coming to the table with them, making deals and giving them money. So let me roll into my final thought because I feel like we're living in bizarro land. Really, like every time once in a while when my sanity starts to slip and I start thinking we're living in a simulation, I make these lists and they're kind of insane, right? Biden is back at his small desk. Insanity. We got Chinese spies getting caught in New York. We have corrupt New York politicians. We got Trump on the bubble to get sentenced by a corrupt Democrat New York judge in the coming week or so, unless that gets pushed back. We got Russia and Iran, Russia, all over again, trying to interfere in our elections while Donald Trump is a candidate. And what the hell? Brian Stelter is back at CNN. Gene, this shit ain't real. To quote that girl on the airplane, that motherfucker ain't real. There's something wrong, Gene. We slipped into another timeline.
Well, I, for one, am certainly glad that Brian Stelter is back. It means that I'm going to have content again from Mr. Potato Head, which is just great on my end. I've been struggling with my final thought. Some of you may watch this on replay, watching currently, may be asking why we didn't mention the Georgia school shooting that occurred today while we're doing this. And that's mainly because we self-impose a moratorium on these sort of events because we want the facts to just play out. We want the news to get out there. We want to judge slowly as to what happened here and the facts and circumstances of it. We want to make sure that we have a measured debate about what happened with this and have information out there. Like, this was a child that brought a gun to school and it's already illegal for children to have guns. We want news to get out there, like the alleged school shooter has been on the FBI's radar for over a year. That's news that is breaking at the end of the show that we didn't have at the beginning of the show. So as we look at issues like this that are breaking news and everybody has these reactions about the shooter, who they are. There's always that lottery game of, is it a minority? Is it a male? Is it a Republican? Is it a Democrat? And everybody's hoping in the midst of tragedy to score their political points. We don't do that here. So that's not going to be my final thought for today. I know I kind of got a roundabout way of doing that, but I felt like we needed to give an explanation to our audience as to why we're not doing that. I want to talk about where we are as a nation as far as, talking about deadlines in time and what Galloway was talking about earlier with Kamala Harris. We are now in crunch time in this election. What does that mean? We're after Labor Day. That means people are home, kids are going back to school, college students are going back to school. Life is getting back to the default setting out of summer, and that means people are starting to pay attention to politics, to their lives, what their vote actually means. And what we're seeing in the first moments here of crunch time is that the honeymoon is over for Kamala Harris. We see Trump again gaining ground in battleground states like Pennsylvania, like Georgia, like Arizona, like North Carolina. We see that trend going forward. We see Nate Silver's 538 increasing Donald Trump's odds of winning. That doesn't mean that Republicans should be complacent or anything like that. It's certainly not in the bag. This debate's going to mean a whole lot. But in thinking about the time of year that we're entering, especially with kids going back to school and colleges reopening, watch the explosion on college campuses once again over Israel and Hamas. It's going to be coming back into the news. Kamala Harris is going to have a reckoning with it. We already see in New York universities, I believe Columbia University is already destroyed. I saw paint on statues, protests going on, threats of violence already. This issue is not going away. And it certainly shouldn't go away in the minds of Americans when you send your children, young adults, to these universities and these schools. Get ready for another explosion on campus. And I think as you see that going on, we're going to see the trend continue in favor of Donald Trump because the left can't police their own. And after a raucous summer of vibes and joy and all this hope and Kamala Harris's platitudes and her smile and the hugs and all the smiles at the DNC convention where there was no bump, you're now going back to real life. You're going back to reality. And I think you're going back to a world where, God willing, Trump wins. And that's my final thought, pal. Feel free to critique it all you want.
From your mouth to God's ears, man. I hope you're right.
Well, we'll see. We're only a couple of months away now, aren't we? It certainly is crunch time. Which means that we're going to have a lot to talk about in the coming weeks and months to come, pal. Buckle up, baby. Behind Enemy Lines is about to get lit. And we're glad that you guys are here with us to discuss this and to comment with us and talk to us and to like, share, subscribe, all the stuff that we love for you to do. But for this episode, at least, it's time to shut this sucker down. What do you say, Ross?
Republicans have a backbone. Attach the SAVE Act to the next spending bill. Shut the government down if you have to. That bill stops illegals from voting in our elections. Look it up, people. The Republicans need to have a backbone and take a stand. Gene, shut it down.
All right, folks. We're shutting this down here. Thanks for going behind enemy lines with us. Now play my motherfucking anthem. Good night, folks.
Not without electoral.
Go fuck yourself. Is that clear?
Don't let them have sway. Conservative battalions walking them out, marching through the streets while the buffoons all shout. Move in the shadows, flag on my chest, repping my clan, putting faith to the test. Cause we're playing blue behind enemy lines, fighting for the truth, feels like wartime. Don't back down, keep it rugged and raw, cool in the chaos, but loud in the war. But loud in the war. Thunder, armored advance, march to the anthem, this is our chance. just like wartime. Don't back down, keep it rugged and raw. Cool in the chaos, but loud in